Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healing and Dealing podcast. Today, I have Becky Aste, and she is a trauma informed marriage coach who equips ambitious wives to repair thriving connection in their relationship by moving trauma out of the body. After spending a decade researching and going through every mainstream modality of healing to save her marriage, she found herself 2 kids later, separated from her husband on the verge of divorce. At the final hour, she stumbled upon the unconventional game changer of somatic work that took her marriage from dying to thriving in less than a year and has made it her mission to get into the hands of every woman possible ever since. Hi, how are you?
So good, Charlotte. I'm so excited to talk to you. Thanks for bringing me into your space.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you. I feel like everything that you're bringing with your coaching business and with your podcast is so deeply aligned with what I'm doing. And not only that, your story just resonates with me so much with, things I've been through in my own relationship with my husband. So I can't wait to learn from you, and I can't wait for my listeners to learn some amazing things today. And first, I just want to start off with getting to know you and what led you to the place you're in today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got married super young. We were 21. My husband was 23, fresh out of college. And so we were babies. And I noticed really early on this dance between us. Like at the time, I didn't have words for it. So I called it chase and run, where I'd chase and he'd run. And then when we were good, we were good. When we weren't, we were not. And I was trying pretty soon on in my marriage to figure us out and trying to heal. And so gained new lingo and, vocabulary along the way. Like I identified with anxious attachment style, and my
Right.
husband pegged him for avoidant attachment,
hmm
and then codependent and addiction, and finding all of these things that, like, hey, these descriptions totally fit us, but it didn't actually fix anything. After 10 years of therapy, couples counseling, EMDR, graduated from 2 codependency recovery groups, went on to sponsor and lead those, books, workshops, podcasts, all the things. We found ourselves 2 kids later, separated and on the verge of divorce. And so that's when I found somatic work. It was a course that I stumbled upon, this woman that I found off Instagram, and her course ended up being this like missing key that I felt like, why did I not find this 10 years sooner? But it turned all of this latent information that I was carrying kind of in my head and just woke it up and really learned how to embody secure connection with my husband. We repaired. We went on to go from just surviving to thriving. And so now I run a group coaching program because I just want to save women decades plus of unnecessary wheel spinning, trauma, challenges, and find out what can supersede their healing journey.
Yeah, wow, what a beautiful, beautiful journey. I kind of want to back up a little bit because I do relate with, both of your attachment styles. Me and my husband are really similar. But where do you think your anxious attachment came from?
I just remember growing up, my mom was very anxious all of the time, and any little mistake that she made, like I just have this one memory where she was running the dishwasher while my dad and I were watching a movie, and he was like, Dee Dee, can you turn off the dishwasher while we watch this movie? And instead of like, yeah, honey, no problem, she turned it off and then started huffing and puffing and stomping up the stairs and was like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," like freaking out,
Yeah.
apologizing. And I was like, in my head, like, "What is wrong with you?" So I saw a lot of instances like that growing up, and even though I logically knew, like, I don't that's not healthy, like, you don't need to respond like that, I now know that our body keeps the score of what's mirrored to us since childhood,
Yes.
and so that was written on my subconscious blueprint of my nervous system. As unhealthy as it was familiar, and so I think that's a part of it. And then, my dad died suddenly when I was 18. It was my first
Oh,
week of college.
wow.
He had a heart attack, and I met my now husband, like, that month, the month that my dad died, and so
Wow.
abandonment wounds, coming into this relationship. Just anytime he didn't text me back or, respond, it was like it was reminding me of my dad disappearing out of nowhere. I was constantly operating from this place of fear of losing Sebastian, my husband.
Wow, that's such divine timing for him to come into your life the same month that you lose your father. Wow. So it's so interesting how when we're younger, we're watching our parents and we see how they're acting and we're like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with them?" And then we turn into them in a sense. Even though we watched it and we knew we didn't want to be like that, it does get deeply ingrained in us. There's so many things that I see now, that I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, my mom, why does she act like that?" And now, I'm catching myself doing it and having to really change that and learn new ways so I don't pass down the same things to my children. So what a great thing that you recognize that. And how would you say your attachment style is now?
Yeah, I would say it's still in there. It's not like the anxious little monster never shows up, but I get to hold it now with love and understanding
Right.
and compassion. It's almost like I speak to that fearful little creature. I picture it like, or like ego popping up of like, I understand, this reminds you of something from your past, but I'm in the driver's seat now and I know how to drive this, train. And
Yes,
you don't have
yes.
no way. I appreciate you, being there to protect me, but I don't need you to do that anymore. So, yeah, literally just have turned into this crazy person who talks to her.
It's great though, because we all have these parts of us that we had to call on so many times when we were younger for protection. And I always encourage, people that I'm talking with, recognize those parts, love on those parts, give those parts compassion because they were there for you when a time that you really need them, but understand that maybe they're not serving you anymore and it's okay to let them go. And, some people I know have even named their parts like different names. And so I totally get what you're saying and where you're coming from. I
Yes.
definitely have also, had an anxious attachment. Obviously, if you've listened to my prior podcasts, I had a really traumatic childhood, very unpredictable, not safe, lots and lots of reasons to have an anxious attachment style. And my husband also very avoidant, so when you mix those two together, can you kind of tell the listeners what you would get when you mix someone who's anxious and, kind of needy to someone who's more avoidant and not really able to give the person what they need in that moment?
Yeah, it's just like it's exactly what draws you to each other at the beginning because you're so different from each other, and then it's
Mm,
exactly what repels you because both of your core fears are getting triggered. Like for somebody who identifies with anxious attachment style, our deepest fear is the disconnection, the severed connection, the abandonment, the disappearing, from our
right.
partner. And then on the other hand, you have somebody, if they identify with avoidant attached, they are terrified of intimacy and deep connection for different reasons. Maybe
Yes.
they went through something where there was an intimate person in their life who ended up, really harming them. And so they
Yeah.
associate deep intimacy with being or maybe it's just a childhood where they had well-meaning parents, but parents that didn't know how to really be there for
Yeah.
them emotionally, so they've actually never experienced, like, "Oh, this is what a deep, emotional, intimate connection feels like," with my caretaker.
Yes.
I just feel seen, understood, like I belong, and so, it plays on both of our deepest fears and can be, yeah, a perfect storm.
I'm so curious if that's why Henry and I, my husband, had the first 2 years of our relationship. It was like cat and mouse. It
Mhm.
was exactly what you were describing. Like, I would chase him at one point, he wouldn't be ready. He would chase me, I wouldn't be ready. And but there was always like this magnetic force pulling us together, But it was just like we both had so much healing to do, and he obviously wasn't ready for that deep, intimate relationship. And I was, healing from lots of different things, but once we finally came together, we just worked out a way to heal those parts of us together and really talk about it. And I would kind of explain the things I'm anxious about so and see where he could meet me halfway and help me feel more secure. And vice versa. He would be anxious about some things too, and our insecurities play a role in that. So once we both decided like, okay, we see how we are, let's just make the commitment and move in together, which was probably the stupidest thing we could have done, but we were so in love, and we were just like, let's go for it. After that, it was like over the years, it's been 13 years now, we are definitely in a secure space now, which is so beautiful. And that kind of leads me into like the issues that came up in your marriage when you noticed like, things weren't going well and you were possibly thinking about separating. I've been there too. I've been there many times where I would just point the finger or, think of everything that's wrong with him rather than take a look at myself in the mirror and what am I doing? How can I heal myself to show up better in this relationship? So, what did that look like for you and Sebastian? Like what were some of the issues and what did you do to kind of move through that?
I can totally relate to you with just constant resentment, pointing the finger. I would never say that out loud. Like, I would always say, we each have our issues, we each play our part and contribute to the dysfunction. But I really, deep in my core, believed, like, no, you've got way more work to do. And I do,
Oh
and I
my
thought I was
gosh.
so good at hiding it, but he can feel like, that's what I teach my clients now, whatever the subconscious stories are that you don't even wanna admit to yourself, like, that's actually what's being communicated, not the words
Right.
coming out of your mouth, and so
Wait, can you just say that again? What you just said? That's so perfect.
yeah, it's the subconscious stories that you might be even afraid to admit to yourself, that's what's actually getting communicated, not the words just by themselves.
Yes, and I think so many people don't understand that, and all these messages are being sent, and they feel it. They can feel it.
Yeah, I know, like 97% of our communication is nonverbal. So it's in
Yeah.
our body language, our energy, our eye contact or lack thereof, facial expression,
Yeah.
the vibe, like whatever our body has kept the score of, like that's
Yep.
sending off signals. And so we get caught up on the words. Communication is only 7% words. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, for us, it was really just me as we went through different stressful life stages. It started with the birth of my son, who's now 7. And as beautiful as that was, as much joy as it brought us, it also led to my fearful, just controlling, manipulative, clutching energy getting
Mm.
tighter and tighter, of like wanting to make sure me and him are good all the time and getting triggered if he didn't and I had a previous history of betrayal, and so constantly wondering, like, who's he actually talking to, like, wanting to go
Right.
internet search history, his phone messages, a lot of hypervigilance and checking on him. Even though I was trying my best to hide it, again, he can feel the energy behind that. And
Yeah.
so that freaked him out. And the more I clutched, the more it's just what you said, the cat and mouse, the more he avoided, escaped with his cocktail of choices. With he was in addiction recovery for years, um, and so it just reached its head, through the pandemic. That was another big, kind of fire under, or like
Yeah.
light on fire, gas on fire, whatever you wanna call it, and it
Mhm.
reached this head where we realized that we're really not bringing out the best of each other, and we feel caught really deeply on this in this toxic dance, and so, hopefully you can edit out the background noise. My son here is, like,
It's
running.
okay. Don't
Okay.
worry about it.
So, yeah, it just reached its head where he was actually the one, he made a big mistake that he was like, If you wanna separate, I understand," and it kind of took the relief, it made me feel a bit relieved because it was something that I had been thinking about for a while and kind of like I knew was meant to be the next best step, but was terrified of, because here I am terrified of abandonment. And so we did end up he moved into his mom's for, I think it was a total of 3 months.
Wow. What was that like?
The first night I'll never forget, it was the silence of just him not walking through the house, not hearing his footsteps, not feeling his energy, and that was excruciating for me because it really did, not that I was able to put this together consciously at the moment, but it brought me right back to that news of my dad just disappearing off the face of the
Right.
earth, and I couldn't touch him anymore, I couldn't talk to him, I couldn't hear him, I couldn't, he was just gone, and so that's what
Yeah.
it felt like, and it was excruciating, and so my nervous system, I remember, I mean, even looking back at journaling, during that time, these entries were like, "Please to God," like, "Please, can you
Mm,
just my nervous system feels like it's on fire." I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but
yeah.
like I was just crawling out of my skin, and I called my best friend. I remember saying, "Courtney, I think this is where people are on the brink of a nervous breakdown, like I
Yeah.
or like about to get admitted for psych help because I feel so unstable on a level I've never experienced before." So it was awful. And then that's when
Wow.
I was just scrolling on Instagram because that's what you do when you're trying to drown out the noise in your head. I
Right.
this woman and the reels that she posted were like, it was a funny one on repairing after betrayal trauma, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a heavy topic to make a joke about, but
Right.
I could use a little laugh right now, like, everything feels heavy." And then I find myself daily scrolling all of her content, like Netflix binging every single one of her posts, deep diving, and just ended up, booking a call with her, and so it was during
Awesome.
preparation that I did find what ended up being, the healing.
How was it for your husband? Do you know? The separation.
He, um yes. How do I even describe it though? Nobody's asked that question. That's so interesting. So for a while, he was relieved. There was this relief part because, the avoidant part of him was like, okay, this is space. Like I can do
Yeah.
what I want, kind of freedom. And he did do what he wanted during that time. There was like more stuff to heal from and
Mm,
forgive and apologize. And it was also really sad for him. Like he has always been the most incredible father. So I think the separation from the kids was excruciating for him.
yeah.
And he was just really confused, kind of just like on this wandering, kind of soul searching journey that time, was just trying to tap into his own different paths of healing that he had never tried before. And yeah, it was kind
Like,
of a disillusioning time.
what did he try? I'm just curious.
I mean, he met with, like, a psychic, like, for example.
Okay.
He'd
Awesome.
never gone down that route or, experimenting with psilocybin, just to
Mhm.
help with his own depression, meeting with a different therapist,
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Awesome. Wow, like, it's beautiful to hear that he actually went on a healing journey himself because that's why I asked because oftentimes, women will kind of turn inward and really try to work on themselves and, men sometimes don't really take that opportunity to do that. So, I'm so
Mm.
happy for you that he did because I mean, what happened? You guys worked it out 3 months
Yeah,
later?
so well, first, I just wanna comment on that because it's interesting. Because at the time, I wouldn't have said, "Oh, wow, he's on his healing journey." Like, I totally felt like what he was doing wasn't the right kind of healing, and had judgment towards all the different
Interesting.
paths that he was trying to take, and even with the therapist he was seeing, the story in my head was like, "But you're not actually in it, you're just doing it because this is what I said that I need," you know?
Wow.
And so now I can honestly say he's always been on his own path and he's wanted to soothe his suffering and his trauma just as much as I did. But there was, again, back to the finger pointing, I was not able to see the effort because it just didn't look like that on the outside uh,
Yeah. You
to
had
me.
your idea of what you wanted him to do, but we soon realized that we can't control other people's healing or their journey or how fast they heal, and that's also been something I've had to process and work with as well because my husband definitely isn't, in this like growth mindset like I am all the time. He is, but it's just not as, I guess, rapid as mine because I'm like in it and like really working. So yeah, it's hard when we place this judgment on our significant other of where we wish they would be or what wish they would be doing, but as soon as we're able to let go and let them heal on their own and you just focus on yourself, they're watching you too. And they're seeing how much you're healing and how beautiful that is. And then they're like, wow, I want some of that, you know? Or what have you been doing? Maybe teach your partner some stuff. So that's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, and that's what it was. If you ask him now, like, what was the turning point, he'll comment on how different the energy felt, like, in the home between us. And he said for the first time in our relationship, he was able to sense just the safety that I had
Mm-hmm.
in my own skin, in my own, energy. And I remember having conversations where he was being more honest than he had ever been in our entire relationship, and me not
Wow.
getting rattled and sent into a spiral, and me being able to just nod my head and, like, radically accept what was coming out of his mouth, which,
Mm-hmm.
one, felt insanely freeing for me because I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be unhooked from him as much as I was clutching,
Right. Yes.
and also really like, "Whoa, what's happening on his end?" Like, I've never been able to speak my truth on this level and for her to really have herself. And so
Yeah.
that was the difference. Was during that separation, we started to have conversations like that, and COVID kind of helped as well. I remember there was one night where I went out with girlfriends, and I was like, "You can crash here if you," because he was watching the kids. I was like, "If you don't want to go home super late at night, just crash on the couch." But he woke up the next morning and he had COVID, and
You're
mom was
stuck
very,
now.
yes. We weren't sending him back to his mom's house. There was the 15-day quarantine that we started to have some of the most breakthrough conversations.
Wow, really? Wow, that's awesome. I need to know what you did. What did you work on in those 3 months that transformed you so much to where your husband felt a different energy and vibe and safety?
The program that I did, it was called Beyond Breath, and I just wanna give the coach a shout out. She's incredible. Her name's Soraya Bastian. But what she taught me to do is repair connection with my husband by moving trauma out of my body. And so,
Yes.
learning for the first time how to go from the fight, flight, freeze mode into the rest, digest, I can breathe
Yeah.
mode of, "Oh, this is what it actually feels like to feel safety in my body." And
Mm.
so she used a lot of different modalities from, breathing exercises, yoga, grounding tools, um, yeah, especially at the beginning, that was, like, a lot of the work that we were doing. And it's
Mhm.
not like I had never done yoga before or, like, done guided breathing, but
Right.
it was just new. It was on a deeper level than I had ever experienced, and it was actually starting to work. Um,
Yeah,
and
and
then
your intention as well was probably different.
what's that?
Your intention was probably different too.
Mhm. Yeah, it was the most, I think, desperate at the end of my rope I'd ever been because I had tried so many other things.
Mhm.
I agree with that. And then she was really the first coach, mentor, like, guide in my life that really taught me how to turn back to my own intuition and learn to trust it and be able to learn what feels in my body like a hell yes, what feels like a no, not right now, and then
Mhm.
what feels like a no, never, ever, ever. And I had been through just a lot of different from relationships I was in where there was gaslighting or like a secret sexual abasement or, deceit. I had learned not to trust my gut because anytime something fell off and I brought it up, I was either lied to or it was hidden from me. And so
Wow.
after years, I thought I must be crazy. And then just some of the different spiritual communities that I was a part of, there was way more
Mhm.
of an emphasis on trusting authority and other people and getting advice than being pointed back to, like, but what do you think? And what do you feel?
Right.
So it was a big, journey of just reconnecting with myself on the deepest subconscious, spiritual, and cellular level that I've ever tapped into.
How long is the program?
Hers was an 8-week course if you're going through her modules,
Awesome.
for a week. When I got in, it was like lifetime access to the program, but she's since shortened it. I wanna say it's 9 months now, And that really does end up serving people. Some people, because they know, "Oh, I have lifetime access to this, I'm never gonna get around to it." And so she did that
Right.
to serve her clients.
Yeah. First, I just really want to acknowledge you for doing the work because it's not easy. It's not easy to dig into yourself and figure out, why am I like this? What can I do to repair and be the best version of myself possible? And so many people don't do it. So I'm just really proud of you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I want to kind of pick your brain on the thought of, I'm sure you deal with couples or wives where they both come from trauma. And, what would be some advice that you would give to a couple who both have suffered from traumatic experience in their lives, but they are in love and they want to be together, but, all of these things are coming up for them. Is it even possible to be with someone else who's had severe trauma? Or, should people look for, if they've had trauma, should they look for someone who had a squeaky clean childhood? Or what's your take on that?
I love that question. And now, because of what I've been through and what I've seen, and just so many different women with different stories, baggage, trauma, deep, deep hurt within the marriage, and even carried in from before their marriage, I am now a believer, and you can't convince me otherwise, that there's really no trauma that can't be repaired and healed if you really are dedicated to putting in the work. And so what I would say is, to answer that, of like, where do I start if I'm in a relationship where I've been through a lot, and my husband, where we both carried in this baggage, is
Mm-hmm.
possible to repair? I'll answer that question kind of by geeking out for a second and nerding out.
Awesome. I love that.
Okay, we all have what's called, the vagus nerve. It's like the giant, big kahuna
Mm-hmm.
nerve that runs from the base of our skull to the bottom of our spine, and you can think of it like the superhighway of information, that the vast majority of neurotransmitters, like internal chemical messengers, are constantly traveling up and down
Mm-hmm.
your spine. So 20% of those internal messages go from our brain to our body, and 80% go from our body to our brain.
Wow.
And so what the, like, modern, especially Western psychology, mental health world people will say, if your marriage is not working, is, right, go to therapy, go to couples counseling, read this book, listen to this podcast. I am a fan of all of those things. I'm not downing them. But if that's only the only modalities that you're using, you're only working with 20% of the way that your
Mm-hmm.
body's designed. So you're going to feel like a salmon swimming upstream, and, spend years spinning your wheels at best, or at worst. I see a lot of clients, and this was part of my journey too, where you can end up getting re-traumatized, because of how much you're replaying the past and staying stuck.
Mm.
The body work, somatic work or nervous system regulation, those are kind of words to describe working with that 80% of natural flow of messages. And so that's the suggestion, the advice
Mm-hmm.
that I give is just like, please, for goodness sake, learn how to get into the body and move trauma out, because your body has kept the score of all the trauma that you've survived. And
Yeah.
so that's where I would begin.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And a great place to start for that is the book, The Body Keeps Score. That one, if you haven't read it yet, everyone, you have to get that book because it really explains everything that we're talking about. And it's funny because I didn't recognize my nervous system when it was activated until I would feel it, but I didn't know what was going on, kind of like you said earlier, like, I feel like I'm on fire, but I don't know what it is, I don't know how to tame it,
Yeah.
until I started somatic work and learning about my body and where I feel certain things and really being able to focus and slow my breathing and do the breath work, and breath work has done amazing things for me. The first time I did it was honestly, in February, and I had the biggest breakthrough I've had in so long, and it's gonna sound so simple when I tell you what the breakthrough was, but, um, it was the first time I genuinely told myself, "I love you."
Mm.
And it was where it was a huge room with all these women laying on the ground, and it was an event that I went to for the coaching program I'm in. And I started, following their instructions and doing the breathing, and all of a sudden, like, it just came pouring out of me, and I was crying, and I was like, just releasing everything that was inside of me from my body. And it was like throwing up, but it was like
Yeah.
with your body, and I was saying things out loud. I was, talking to myself, but everyone was doing it. So it was like kind of loud in that room. So I didn't feel uncomfortable or anything. And at one point, I didn't even care who heard me. I was like, I don't care. I'm letting this out. And at the end, I was just crying and I was holding my chest and I was like, just saying, I love you, Charlotte. I love you, Charlotte. And I journaled right after because I didn't want to forget, what happened to me, that major shift. And I'll never ever forget that. And since that day, the first like week I was on it, I was like, I love you every time in the mirror, I was trying to keep it up. And now I do it as often as I can remember. But now it's like when I do it and I look at myself and I tell myself I love you, I believe it. And I'm like, yes, like this feels so good to know that I do love the person that I am right now. Because for so many years, I I thought I did, but I really didn't.
Mm.
I was just always so activated that I never could calm myself enough to even like the person I was most of the time. You know what I mean? Like, especially with drinking alcohol throughout the years, and that really played a huge role in me not liking myself. So now that I'm sober for 8 months, that's completely improved, which is fantastic. But yeah, the somatic work is, I hold it so deeply to my heart, and I can't wait to dive in even further so I can, be a master teacher someday and teach people breath work and somatic work. But the mixture of subconscious and somatics is so interesting to me, and I love it, and I'm definitely going to use it on my clients when I start working with people one-on-one for sure.
That makes me honestly so excited because when people hear kind of what the work that I do and I tell them a little bit about the program, the most common response is like, wow, that's so unique. Like they're, but like, wow, I haven't heard of
Mm,
that. My response to them is genuinely, I hope that this is not the response like 5, 10 years from now, hopefully even sooner, where
yeah,
it ends up being the norm. And when people's, relationships or nervous systems are failing, the first suggestion is like, get into the body, like get into somatics, because
right,
it is as powerful as you described, and that's also what I love about this work is when you try to tell people, it's almost like this is gonna sound too simple to be so powerful, but
right,
when you experience it, like, there's no breakthrough that tops that. The simple things of, like, no, not only could I tell myself I love myself, like, I actually believe it, not mentally, but in my whole being, in my
mhm.
cells. So it just makes me so excited. I'm like, "More somatic practitioners, where you at? Come for it." Never even if you're
Yes.
listening right now and you're like, "This is the first time I've even heard about it," learn it for yourself, pass it on to your children, like, it truly is. I'm seeing this rise of awareness and conversation about it, and it makes me really freaking excited.
Yeah, for sure. One tool that I used daily, sometimes multiple days, is anchoring. And I'm sure you know what that is. And it's when you, just so everyone knows, it's when you find, safety within your body, whether that's your heartbeat or your breath. And you just take, some deep breaths and you kind of find safety inside your body. And then you find safety externally, whether it's the walls around you, the chair you're sitting in, and you really just calm your whole energy. And for me, that really works. It can only take a couple minutes sometimes. It can be longer if you want, but really just finding that grounding energy when you're, especially in those moments when your nervous system is, starting to be activated, and you're like, okay, I need to time out for a second. I have to do that all the time with my kids, no joke.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I love anchoring. It's really helped me in the day-to-day moments. What have you tried EFT? Have you tried tapping?
I was so skeptical at first. I'm like, "Really? Just tapping on your palm and your forehead? Like, this looks crazy." Just, like, all
Mhm.
critical at first. But then when I started to dedicate myself to it consistently and see the massive breakthroughs I was having in a lot of different areas. I've done tapping on my relationship. I've done it with my parenting, with healing money wounds. It's almost
Yes.
too undeniable. I'm like, either this is a massive coincidence or this freaking works. And when you even
It
do
works.
studies and like see the research between traditional, talking through things versus tapping through them, the longevity of the results, like the results actually lasting, is night and day different compared to
Yeah.
talking problems.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I'm teaching it to my daughter. Tapping, for anyone who doesn't know, it's another way to calm your nervous system. And especially if you're feeling really upset about something, you go through this tapping sequence on your body. And, you rate it how you feel at the beginning and how you feel at the end. And if anyone ever wants to try it, I am a certified practitioner now. So I'd be happy to lead you in an EFT session. I'm still, I do it on myself, obviously, but still practicing with clients. So, always looking for new people to take through that and just learn what this can do for your body and for your mind. It's definitely a beautiful thing. I'm so happy to have found it.
I love that you mentioned the kids too. I saw a reel the other day and it was a mom baby wearing. She was wearing her baby and she was tapping while she had the baby on her chest and
Oh, I love that.
talking about, 'cause you co-regulate with whoever is like in your energy.
Yes. Yes.
If they're like literally on you, like your circadian rhythms sync up. Like if you're in a fight flight mode, your baby's gonna pick that up. And if not, it's gonna
Totally.
too. And so it's powerful when you bring in the kids to it. And sometimes I'll even tap on my kids when they're in a tantrum. Like they don't even know
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing, and I'm like
You're
going
like,
like point. Yeah. So yeah, powerful stuff.
yeah, my daughter just turned 8 and she had a major tantrum like a week ago. And it was my first time practicing with her. Excuse me. And she says this a lot where she's like, like my body just wants to freak out and I can't control it. And then, she's voicing this to me and I'm like, okay, what do I remember to do? I'm like, go back to, like the coach, Charlotte, or the healer. And I sit her down. I'm like, okay, we're going to try tapping. It's this technique. And she's like crying, super heightened, having a really hard time calming down. And I went through it with her, and we went through, the sequence 3 times, and by the end, she was completely calm. And she was like, "Wow, we should do that again." I was like, "Yeah, you think so? Like, look at you. You're so calm now." And she couldn't even remember why she was upset.
Amazing.
I
Like, can you ever
know.
imagine our parents would never do that with us? It just wasn't available to us.
They're like, "I'm not tapping on my kid. That's crazy." But it's pressure points, that's why, everyone. So it's based on Chinese medicine, acupuncture, it's pressure points, and there's certain spots on your body that will calm your nervous system when you do the tapping sequence. So look into that for sure. Or DM me, email me, or reach out to Becky if that's what you want to do for some somatic work. You got to get in on this movement because it's life changing for sure. Is there anything else that you want to talk? I noticed that you had sent me what was it? Something to include in the show notes. What is that?
So I have a free training that I usually offer new followers in my Instagram community. It's 3 secrets to thriving intimacy. And it's
Mm,
just a free 20-minute webinar on all the ways that I was, kept stuck for years and the 3 things that helped launch, my marriage into repair. And so that's a free offering for you. If you want that, she'll include that in the show notes.
definitely. I'm going to jump on that too, by the way. Oh, I'm so happy we were able to connect, and we have so many similarities and probably so much more we can talk about. But thank you for sharing your energy and all the beautiful things you said and geeking out for a minute because I think it's so important for people to understand, the science behind it and the biological points to understand. So yeah, there's actually just a side note. I listen to this podcast all the time, and I'm wondering if you know it. Her name is Victoria Albina, and the
No,
podcast is called Feminist Wellness.
no,
And
but
it's
I love podcasts, so I'm gonna go follow that.
okay, everyone, this podcast is amazing. It's all about somatics, it's all about your body, polyvagal nerve, everything like that. So, I've had a call with her one-on-one as well. She does run a program. It's expensive and it was out of my price range, but highly, highly recommend that podcast if you're looking to learn more about somatics and what's going on in your body and so many other things she talks about. I really highly recommend it. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I will include all of your information in the show notes so people can find you. But what is your Instagram handle, just so everyone has it now?
Yeah, Rebecca Lee Aste.
Liaste. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for another episode. I also just want to say to my listeners, the reviews I've been getting have been so amazing and have warmed my heart more than you could possibly imagine. So, thank you so much for sharing the podcast and leaving reviews. It's really motivating me to keep going and share my voice with all of you. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart. All right. Have a great day, everyone.